Hi, hello everybody. Thanks for having me. It's so wonderful to kind of come onto the stage after you, actually, because everything you said I could feel I've been through. And I'm so pleased that there's some sort of clinical study being done into it and it's not just something in my head. I was really nervous about doing this tonight, and on the way in I listened to what I call wallpaper, something which wallpapers over my worries, and I listened to Oprah Winfrey interviewing Lady Gaga. What was interesting about that, it was on the Soul Sunday. I'm an avid Oprah Winfrey fan, and it's a bit geeky, but it was interesting because she spoke about her mental health issues, Lady Gaga, and she talked about how she realized that talking openly about the fact that she's self-harmed and she was suicidal, and used her platform to draw attention to things that others didn't perhaps want to talk about, was her purpose, and it was also an act of kindness. So I'd like to thank Minds at Work, because I think this is an act of huge kindness that you're bringing everyone here today to share people's stories. So this is me on a slide. I choose this picture purposely because I'm an introvert at heart. Doing stuff like this, actually, I can feel myself getting anxious, but my partner describes me as an introverted performer. I enjoy it, but I also get very anxious about it. And I think that on the other side, my more extrovert side, I'm a typical South African, and so there's a few of us in the room today, so I say this with affection, in the sense that I'm quite direct and tend to say what I think, and also grew up in South Africa during apartheid, where only in my final year of school were people of colour welcome to integrate with me. And I remember very clearly sitting on the balcony of my very lovely house in South Africa when school buses of African children used to drive past, and that image of my privilege and the fact that they didn't have the equal opportunities that I did always didn't sit comfortably. And I think that has shaped a lot of who I am today, I think. I also come from a part of Africa called Unkamas, which is where Shaka Zulu, the Zulus fought the Boers in the war. The king of the Zulu, Shaka Zulu, crossed the river in my hometown. So I'm always quite proud of saying that because I think it's quite cool. I'm a strange South African in the sense that my parents are both Italian. So I grew up speaking Italian in South Africa. So it's a bit weird, but that's why the Sopranos are there. I'm not mafioso or anything. I'm also the proud mother of my gorgeous 8-year-old son, Alex. And I think through 8 years of therapy now, I think I realized that my journey with depression probably began when I had my son. And I didn't feel able to go to the doctor and get medicated. I studied psychology. And I always thought that in order to heal yourself of your feelings or any feeling of illness, you had to find the root of it and heal yourself. I didn't believe in medication. So I didn't sleep for 1.5 years during my son's first formative years. And little did I know that now I know, I was probably going through postnatal depression. And just as I was getting better, my father died in a tragic car accident, which threw me back again. One day he was there and the next day he wasn't. And I remember very clearly going home. My mother called me to tell me what had happened. And I went home and just what you describe as just going, disassociating with yourself. I just stepped into my MD leadership role, but on the home front. And I literally, over the course of 2 weeks, organized my father's funeral, rewrote the hymn sheet for the funeral, looked after Mum, who then broke her arm while we were there. It was an absolute nightmare, but never did I give myself a chance to grieve. And then I came back and went straight into work. And was really excited because we had this phenomenal project that had started with Unilever around gender diversity, which is something really close to my heart, and the notion of unstereotyping, the fact that women in leadership should be commonplace. And I was invited to do this great event. Jeff knows who this is. This is Paul Polman, the former chief exec of Unilever. And I'd been working religiously on this big event to launch Unstereotype within Unilever. And at the same time, it was International Women's Day. So I felt a huge sense of purpose as a leader that we were launching this fantastic initiative to this global organization. 9,000 people watched this event in countries around the world. And then at the same time at Salt, we were being approached by an organization who wanted to buy us. And I, as Oprah was saying, I was the first employee at Salt. I've worked there for 18 years. And I very much have developed Salt. I've grown Salt as my baby, as my second child. And the thought of an organization coming in to buy us just threw me. I didn't quite know what to do with that information. And for the first time, the two founders and myself were having debate that perhaps wasn't always aligned. And I felt very much like a lone voice. I felt like I wanted to protect who we were, and they wanted to take us into the future. And that's very much aligned with my risk-averse nature as an individual. At the same time as doing this event and us talking about selling the company, I was doing 4 people's jobs in addition to my own. So we're going through unprecedented growth. I couldn't find the right HR manager to replace the one I had who went on maternity leave and never came back. My very senior leader who was running £1 million worth of business had moved on. My director in Singapore, who was running our most profitable entity in the business, was off having a baby at the same time as my FD in London, who was my right hand, also was having a baby. So it was just a ridiculous, I mean, looking back, I smile because I think it's silly stuff, but I was doing all those people's jobs as well as my own. So no surprise that after this event, which I was like, buzzing, it was hugely successful, on the 7th of March, I woke up and I can only describe my body feeling as though it didn't belong to me. I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't get out of bed. I felt like something had happened. And there was nothing. The day before was a good day. It wasn't like the day before had been awful and unsuccessful. It was a great day. And all of a sudden I woke up and I just felt, oh my God, I'm a lead weight. And I called my husband and I was in tears and I said to him, I can't do this anymore. And he said to me, look, go back to sleep. I'll take care of it. And it's really interesting, that moment when David said that to me, because I'm a feminist in the sense that I've always been somebody who's determined to look after myself. And self-care is something I always thought I was good at, but I'd never waited for somebody to say to me, Nicky, you can let it go, you can stop. And him saying that just made me relax. And I fell asleep for a couple of hours and I woke up to the door opening downstairs and the adrenaline rushed through me because I realized almost with horror what I had done, which is I said to him, take control. And I went to the top of the stairs and I remember looking down at him and I said, Dave, tell me you haven't done it. You haven't done it. You haven't phoned work. And he said, Nicky, it's done. You're not going to work for the next 2 months. And I collapsed on the floor and burst into tears because for the first time in I don't know how long, I had relinquished control. And I thought I was the only person who could do it all, and I had to be there, and I had to keep it going. It was my baby, and nobody else was able to do the job. And as quickly as 2 hours, as in 2 hours, it was all taken away from me. Went back to sleep. My husband said to me, and with hindsight, probably an error in judgment, he said to me, right, I want you to focus on the task of fetching our son from school. So that day, all I did was relax and sleep and look after myself. And my job then was to go fetch Alex at school. And it's a 7-minute walk from my house, and it took me half an hour because my body couldn't function. So I began my journey getting better. And it's the first time I've taken 2 months off. As a leader, with hindsight, I probably should have taken more time off. And I went to see my doctor, who said, yes, Nicky, you've got clinical depression. The thing that surprised me, though, is that leading up to this day, I was vomiting in the mornings. I would have 2 breakfasts. I would vomit in the morning, so I'd have my next breakfast after I'd vomited. I was feeling very nauseous, and when I went to the doctor, she gave me pills and said half of Teddington feels nauseous in the mornings because they're worried about their jobs, so don't worry, you'll be fine. So I took the drugs because I thought, happy days, it'll make me feel better, and they kind of did. I was down to 1 meal a day, which I'm an Italian, we don't do that. And I was getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning and cramming in 3 hours of work before leaving the house at 8 and then staying at work until 8 that evening and then coming home, repeat. And I just carried on doing this, and all the signs were there, and with hindsight, I think they were there, but I didn't think anything was wrong. I also thought, to your slides, I thought nobody could recognize the fact that I was slowly declining. I'd put my game face on. I became quite obsessed with wearing really lovely clothes because I thought if I looked great, nobody would comment. I got lots of comments because I'd lost loads of weight. So I felt great in terms of that. I would throw myself into my work. And I slowly became worse. And when I went to my doctor, she said to me, I want you to read this book, The Curse of the Strong. And this man, it's a terrible photo. I couldn't find a better one. But I honestly, I owe my life to this man. He doesn't know it, but he saved me. His book is genius. So basically, it's 5 chapters in length. It says, if you have clinical depression, you won't be able to read the whole book. Read chapters 1 and 5, which I duly did. And what it did is it just talked me through what it is that clinical depression is. And as a very practical person, I wanted to know what was in my head. And I think my recommendation to anyone who feels, kind of disassociated or you don't know what's going on with you, just try and inform yourself as much as possible. And this, together with his explanation of what happened in the brain and the fact that your chemicals weren't being produced and you literally short circuit, coupled with Simon Sinek, who I really don't want to give him more airtime because I think he gets way too much airtime. But I was watching, again, in my stupor of trying to get better, I was just watching YouTube and videos and stuff. And I was watching a video when he talked about his 3 concentric circles. And he said something, and I rewinded 4 times to hear it. And he talked about how the why is linked to the limbic part of the brain. So you understanding or you having a strong sense of why comes from the limbic brain, which is often associated with clinical depression, being intact. And that for me was a profound moment. I realized that actually my brain no longer knew why it was operating because the limbic brain, the bit of the brain that was responsible for that wasn't working. And I just felt a huge sense of relief. I just kind of realized, oh my God, the reason I don't know why I want to get up in the morning, Ikigai, I don't know if anyone knows this, or you probably all do, but Ikigai, this notion in Japan of having a strong sense of reason why you get up in the morning, I had lost mine. I'd lost Nicky. Nicky was the wife. Nicky was the mother, so much so that in my home I was being called mother by both my son and my husband. Don't let that happen. And Nicky was the MD, and Nicky, me, ceased to exist. And I was also often being told that I was I wore my heart on my sleeve, I was too sensitive, I worried too much. And I just kind of thought, but that's who I am. You're telling me that that's a wrong person, but that's who I am. So 2 months of basically walking around watching reruns of Cold Feet. I watched the entire series of The Sopranos again, and just literally walked through Bushy Park in Teddington. I one day took this photo. This is the first day that I saw happiness again. I looked up in the sky and I saw this cherry blossom and the sky was gorgeously blue. And I took a photo and I thought, oh my God, I feel happy for the first time ever. And it was so relieving to feel that actually happiness was achievable once again. I then went back to work, and Richard, who Jeff knows well, so imagine the most enthusiastic, positive person on the planet. He's my business partner, and he was there, and I walked in and I was hoping everybody would say, do you know what, Nicky, this place just wasn't the same without you. And the first thing he said to me, do you know, it was great, it was great, it was fine, we were fine. And I just kind of felt so sad. But then actually, with hindsight, I think it's good. I built a business that could be sustainable without me. And that's what I think leaders need to try and do, is create something that can operate even if they're not there. All the better. So I wanted to share these as part of my story because what I've done as a result of this journey is I've done a lot of self-reflection. And I've realized that there are 8 steps that I identified that were essential in me finding myself again and finding my purpose. The first is use the past as a reference point. And I often used to think it was work that threw me into depression. And actually, having gone through talking therapy, I realized that there were a number of instances through my journey that meant that I've actually gone through this. And equally, there were a number of times in my history where I felt that I was in my happy place. So I recommend you to just kind of try and look back on your life and think, when have I been really happy and when have I been really sad? Because you'll probably find a really good red thread from which you can draw a lot of things. The second is stop to start. This Dr. Tim Cantifer said this in his book, that you literally cannot continue until you've allowed the chemicals in your brain to replenish themselves and start talking once again. And the fact that I then understood that there was science and chemicals involved allowed me to stop. So give yourself a break, you know. I know you want to achieve, everyone wants to achieve, but in order to get better, just as when you have to convalesce if you've had an operation or a broken leg, your brain needs time to recuperate. Is your flow your purpose? Everyone used to say to me, Nicky, you care too much, you care too much. It's just such a bad thing, you care too much. And then I realized, well, actually, that is my purpose. This gives me anxiety, but I do it because I care to share my story, so hopefully others will be caught before they fall. The wrong bit is where I allow my caring for others to supersede my own self-care. And I've recognized that now, but it took me falling over the edge to realize that. Having safe conversations, so find somebody that you can talk safely to. I used to not talk to my husband and my friends because I was scared I was boring them with the same story. Paying £150 for a therapist or finding one on the NHS to just listen to you. And quite frankly, I don't know if my therapist, who I've known for 8 years, has children, is married, what food she likes to eat. I know nothing about her. I'm completely selfish. I just talk to her and I feel safe. And we seem to have a good dialogue, and that's been the most beneficial thing for me. Surround yourself with stunning colleagues. The people that I've had around me, be they friends, be they work colleagues, have been instrumental in me feeling that I can get better and live my purpose. If you're in an environment, be it family, friends, work, where you feel it's toxic, you need to make a decision as to whether you want to continue that relationship. And I don't mean being reckless, and I'm very aware I say this from a position of privilege because I was a leader in my organization, but if you're unhappy, there is a way, be it finding time at night to try and find a new job, to get yourself out of that toxic situation. I highly encourage it. Reach beyond your echo chamber. Being sick and having 2 months to just read and talk to new people, I sat in cafes and I would talk to strangers, something I've never done as an introvert. Just open your mind, and just that engagement with the world just makes you feel more purposeful, more positive, and probably more altruistic if you help somebody through that engagement. Be positively selfish is something, it's a phrase I love talking about. I mean self-ish, not selfish. So in other words, if there are drinks at night and you really feel that that will just deplete all the energy you have, I highly recommend you say to people, do you know what, I really need time to myself. And if they are good friends, they will understand. Equally, if there's work events that you just don't feel you can attend, explain it. That time to yourself is extremely important, otherwise you will give over and above what you're able to give. And last but not least, invest in self-discovery. I've learned so much through my clinical depression. I understand so much about why I am, and it's been both a blessing and a curse. I wouldn't be standing here had I not fallen ill. So I think just use an opportunity to kind of really understand yourself. We're amazing beings. Just don't forget who you are. That's to your detriment. I've put these in a little book that you can download on LinkedIn if helpful. But thank you for listening to me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.